this Flyover clip.
Hey, Flyover family. For those of you guys that follow the show the last few years, you know that we love sports. It's been a sad time when sports has been used divisively, separating
true.
people. Because what's beautiful about sports is two things, and we both played sports. Stacy's dad was my coach in high school, you know, and so sports,
I know a lot of y'all thought I was a cheerleader. I was actually an athlete.
Yep, no cheerleading here.
No cheerleading.
I have an older,
Although I cheerleed here on the show.
I have an older
Rah,
brother
rah.
who's on a Division II national championship basketball
Yep.
team. It's like this youngest of six. It was just all of our siblings, both your siblings played
Yep.
college sports. We love sports. One thing I love about it's two reasons. One, when you kind of come from the background that I did, single mom, kind of economically struggling to say the least. Most of us had to pay for all of our own stuff by the time we're about in middle school, you know, on anything like that. Sports was a place, I don't care who your dad was or who this or how much money your family had or anything, it was equal.
Yep.
It's like, okay, can you do this thing or not do this thing? It's a meritocracy. It's not a,
nepotism.
Well, hey, this, you know, and if you see one of those situations where like, oh, this guy's starting because his family donated money to do it, it's like nobody respects him and it doesn't last long. It crumbles. Anything that's built where it's not based on merit when it comes to athletics just doesn't hold up. So it makes it a kind of a pure thing to watch. We like sports for that reason. And of all the sports, like UFC, it's like, hey, there's no, hey, he didn't pass the ball or do this thing. You get to MMA, it's mano a mano. It's like, hey, did you show up or not? We love those kind of things. I think we always have, going back to the gladiators, you know, and those kind of fighting. The second thing I like about sports is it's unifying. You know, you walk into Arrowhead Stadium and it's 3rd and 15 and you're in a sea of red. Like, I don't care who's sitting next to me. I don't care their gender, their race,
Question
their age.
is, are they loud enough?
Hey, we're all in agreement right now that we want them to sack the other team's quarterback. It's the loudest stadium in the world, and everybody's on the same page. And it feels good when you're in a room like that of you know 85, 90,000 people, and they're all in complete agreement that they want the opponent's team, they want the quarterback sacked. And we're like, everything else just goes away. Everything, whatever your life is outside the stadium, you leave it there. You walk in. It's like we are on the same page, no matter what. We're in agreement, and that's a cool feeling.
It is.
You know, in a world that is so political and so messed up in so many ways, sports brings everybody together.
Yep.
It has this unifying vibe of like, oh, did you see that? I saw that. When did you see? You know, it's a great way to coach up your kids. You know, when you see a guy dive out of bounds to catch a ball and throw it back in, he never gave up, or you know, the hustle. You're like, hey, that's how you finish. That's what you do, and it's a place where, you know, most people are never professional athletes, but a lot of what we used in business, it's like to know the difference between being hurt and injured. And it's like, hey, I don't feel like doing this today. I'm going to go ahead and do it. It's like there's so many life lessons because one match or one game is like a microcosm of life. There's ups and downs, disappointments, preparation.
It's true.
And it gives everybody this other principle of man, you know, it doesn't go well for you. You know what you do? You spend the whole off season practicing, getting better. You come back the next year better. Those are things you use for life. And so
There's no I in team. All of those things.
all of the
things
cliches
that,
are super true because it's a launching pad to help you be more successful the rest of your entire life. Started following Deion Sanders going from
man,
you don't
a long time ago.
You don't see a lot of top-end athletes become top-end coaches.
Nope.
I think they tried Dan Marino for a little bit, and he'd be like, hey, just throw the ball to him right
What's
then.
the matter with you?
Why can't you?
Don't you get this?
And they're like, well, I can't do what you were doing. So when Deion Sanders, you know, was kind of famously coaching his kids through youth football, and then he took on the position at Jackson State, and he took a historically black college, ironically heavily funded by President Trump. Was a great window there. Was one of his promises fulfilled. All of a sudden, just become dominant with his leadership. We used to do a lot of talks in business about Deion's self-talk. And while it's kind of audacious, I'm this and I never get burned deep. We used to do this whole segment in local seminars when we would train about I never get burned deep.
And they'd play a video behind him of him actually getting burned deep. And they'd say, well, what about this? He's like, I don't recall that.
I don't even remember that.
No, he never remembered
block it out.
anything that was negative. He only remembered the things that he did positive, which I think is a really
It's
great
huge.
life lesson.
In a world where people kind of spiral down, you know, and his self-talk was phenomenal. So that's the backdrop to us watching that in Jackson State. He did great. And then we follow these stories there. Funding cut, things are struggling. The water in the town wasn't even usable. And so I think there's probably a lot of factors, but he gets a job to go to University of Colorado.
Yeah.
I think a lot of teams wanted him. People were fighting to try to get him as a coach, and he brought all of that swagger and 80 new players to Boulder and revamped a team in one offseason. And I think just the tip of the iceberg of where they were headed. So I was like, this is interesting. What can one guy do to change a program that hasn't been a winner since we were in high school? And that's been a minute. We've been married 30 years. So it's been a while since the University of Colorado was actually relevant.
And now they're selling out their games.
Stadiums packed, stadiums filled. Really before it even got started because of the confidence that he brought. They had their first game this weekend. I'm sure by now a lot of you have seen the results of it. Last year's national champion runner-up, TCU, heavily funded school, great program. They went to Dallas. Colorado had their first game and knocked off an incredible team. I don't know what the last time the University of Colorado knocked off a ranked opponent. Been a while. Eric Bieniemy, former Kansas City Chiefs coach, he was a player at Colorado the last time I remember them being relevant. And so it was a kind of a cool moment. It was a feel-good thing in sports.
We couldn't wait to see the press conference. Fired up.
We were working, doing a bunch of stuff, cleaning out a storage unit, doing stuff. We're kind of tracking it. And I'm like, hey, when we get home, I wanted to see the highlights. I watched the 15-minute shortened, abbreviated version breakdown and see these guys play. But we're watching Deion's press conference. And I want to point out something because this is a moment that should have been such a feel-good moment. And for the most part, it is. But in the backdrop of sports being something that is a launching pad to something else, that it being a unifying factor, I think it was a big whiff on his part. I want to play his just a cut of this because there's some places he went that I don't think were necessary and don't necessarily serve his players, serve his college, or really serve America well moving forward. Let's play this cut.
Do things that have never been done, and that makes people uncomfortable. When you see a confident black man sitting up here talking his talk, walking his walk, coaching 75% African Americans in the locker room, that's kind of threatening. Oh, they don't like that. But guess what? We're going to consistently do what we do because I'm here and ain't going nowhere. And I'm about to get comfortable in a minute.
Man, that's such an interesting quote.
Because out of the blue, what he was doing before that, he was kind of calling out members of the media for not believing. And that's an interesting thing because I don't really know that it's the media's job to be a believer in a team. He was specifically calling out a Sports Illustrated reporter. Or
I actually didn't want to answer any of his questions because he didn't believe it.
Yeah, I got him, Ed Warder, who's really an NFL TV analyst. It's been around for a long time. I don't know why he was at the college game because it's such a big story because Deion brings so much attention to it. But I think it would be odd if you had a TV reporter go to a game all swagged out for one of the teams. I mean, it kind of lose some of the credibility. I don't know it's their job to believe. It's their job to report, speculate, draw interest, make sure more people are talking about what it is that you're doing so that they can afford to pay you, to keep doing what you're doing. It's the media and it's their job to do what they do. I don't know it's their job to believe necessarily, but it's good bravado. This is kind of antagonist, relationship between the media and
it was entertaining.
And
no doubt about it.
Definitely entertaining.
Can you break down the quote? Let's look at the quote real fast of what he said.
I just wanted to get it exactly right, but he's going along fine. But all of a sudden he talks about basically you don't like our swag, how confident that I am, and immediately I'm like, no, that's actually not true. I think everybody likes this.
Yeah,
I like that he instantly made their clothes cool. Like they're one of the top selling brands of all universities right now. That vibe, I think everybody liked that. We've used his quotes in business training for years. You like that. Now, the thing I like about football, and I don't even like all the anti-taunting rules and stuff, because if you don't like what a guy's saying, then stop him. If you don't like him dancing in the end zone, then stop him. I hope they keep scoring more until you get better and stop somebody from scoring if you don't like, what they're doing. So at the professional level, especially. But he shifts this and makes this racial, which I don't know that we need more of that. And I don't know that the players in the locker room need more of that. I think
they are actually benefiting from that.
Like they just had a big win. How about framing this in a way that says, these guys worked their butt off. They're doing incredible. These are great young men that are going to become great husbands. They're going to be great businessmen. That are going to be great. Like, let's projecting where they're going versus, wow, the world is against me because I'm a confident black man. I don't know that anybody had that thought watching this, like, oh, these are confident black men. I hope they lose. I don't think that anybody had that thought. It was injected into the conversation by Deion, and I don't get it.
I want to give just a few stats because, I was like looking it up, like, okay, is this not common to have an African-American coach? Well, there's 14 black coaches at 133 of the largest schools in National Collegiate Athletic Association in the FBS. So that's about 10.5% of overall coaches are African Americans. Well, I thought, okay, what's the population in America? 12.1% of the total U.S. population are African Americans. So that's pretty close statistically, to what the U.S. average is. And that was usnews.com that gave that. But I also was curious, how many of the football players are African American? Well, I found out 55.7% of men's football in the Power Five are black, but 70% of the starters during the 2021 FBS bowl season were African American. 84% of signees in the SEC were black. So to have a team that's 75% African American, that's not unusual when it comes to American football.
It definitely is not something they're trying to overcome.
No.
It definitely is not a sign of weakness. We're doing some unique thing of, I have a locker room with 80%, young black men, and that needs to be considered something they're over. I don't know the point of injecting that in there. It really wouldn't. It might be more interesting if there was 80% Hispanic, 80% Asian.
Yeah.
If they were 80% white, it would be a more interesting story. It'd be like, wow, that is breaking the norm. That's an outlier. So it seems to be going a long way around the barn to be able to pull an additional me versus you. I get it when it's him versus the media, and maybe he has a history with some of those people, and he didn't like something that they wrote. I don't know. Maybe, there's a history of that. And a lot of coaches are antagonistic with the media. A lot of the media are taking shots, at the one thing you do see in sports today is the vast majority of them are former athletes, not necessarily journalists. And so they're probably used to their buddies talking good about them and high-fiving. And if you have a journalist that's like, well, this is probably how it's going to go, and they're predicting, wins and losses, maybe they don't like it when it's not just former players that they have a history with. I don't know. That's an interesting move that's happened in media, where there's a lot fewer journalists in every phase of media, and it's more formal players. But he says, when you see a confident black man sitting up here, walking his walk and talking his talk, coaching 75% African Americans in the locker room, that's kind of threatening. Oh, they don't like that. I don't know who the they is, if he's talking to they as the media, if he means they as
American people,
American as a whole. But I just think this is an opportunity where he could say, hey, the majority of people are watching this and they're celebrating what happened. They just saw a team, a university that had not been relevant in most people's current memory, knock off a team that last year played for the national championship.
Yeah.
They should have had a leg up on recruiting. They should have had every advantage. They had all the systems in place, all the coaches in place. And you come in and you revamp a program in one off season and knock them off. That is a feel-good story for the young men in the locker room to be feeling like, wow, look what we did, not look what we did. And how many people out there don't like us because we're black? How many people are cheering against us because we're black? I don't know what the ratio of players for TCU were, but probably pretty similar. Probably pretty similar. And so I think it's negating one of the natural benefits of sports in the first place. Unifying. Everybody's got to come together. The fact of all the different body types and shapes, I've said this many times about like a Tom Brady or a Patrick Mahomes. Like most of the team, they wouldn't win without those guys, but they wouldn't win with 11 of them either.
Right.
They probably wouldn't win with 2 or 3 of them. They wouldn't want a Patrick Mahomes on the offensive line. You wouldn't want a Tom Brady on the offensive line. It's the fact there's a place for everybody. It's such a team sport, football specifically.
So that was just a real missed opportunity.
It's missed opportunity because it creates a seed of a divide that I don't think is the battle right now. I think if he wants to create a battle, you say, hey, what's the percentage of those young men in there that are preparing to be great husbands and fathers?
Yep.
How many are going to be part-time working into our medical school when they're done or graduating? What's their graduation rate? How many are going to be, walking into professions? How many are maybe increasing the number of players that are going to be coaching and in leadership positions, maybe, those kind of things. But I think that we're past this place of movies like Glory Road that came out, when it came out, I don't know, it's been 10, 15 years ago, but a story about the first ever NCAA basketball team that all 5 starters were African-American to compete in a national championship game, and they won. Amazing story. Our whole family went the day that it came out. We bought the DVD. It's an incredible story. It's no longer relevant. It's not a thing in 2023 of like, hey, look what someone's overcome. We've come so far as a country where sort of a lot of that is in the rearview mirror. Do we have problems and issues now? Absolutely. But it's not cheering against a football team based on the ethnic race of the players
or
the coach or the players or any of these things. We are a nation that is much more unified than divided, but we have a media apparatus and a narrative that says, hey, it is more present now than it was then. And I don't think that's the case. What do you guys think? Comment down below and let us know your thoughts. Are we off track here and whacked or not? I'm still going to keep following him because I think Deion's amazing. I think what he's doing at the University of Colorado is amazing. And I hope that this narrative changes because it has the opportunity to be a really good thing. And we don't need any extra, flies in the soup.
We are here to defend democracy.
Misinformation poses a threat to our nation's health.
Climate change is an emergency.
Democratic socialism.
Codify women's right to choose.
Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15.
Flyover family, join me every Wednesday for the prophetic report at 11:11 Central. You can find it on Rumble. You can find it on the Flyover app. We have such an incredible time of hearing from all of these different prophetic voices like Robin Bullock, Julie Green, Barry Wunsch, Amanda Grace, and Hank Kuhneman. Every week, it's either 5 or 6 different prophets that are speaking, and what's interesting is God is speaking through them, and all of these voices come together like puzzle pieces. It is so exciting to hear what the Lord is saying. We're hearing from medical. We're hearing from military intelligence. We're hearing from the financial world. We're hearing from mainstream media. But the most important is, what is God saying? He has not fallen off the throne. He's not nervous. He's not chewing his nails. He is in control. He has plans to prosper us and not to harm us. What a great time to be alive, and I'm so excited for you to join me every Wednesday at 11:11.
Have you ever wondered about ancient civilizations or the moon landing, chemtrails, the Nephilim, demons? Those are all things that fascinate me. Decided to use our platform of the Flyover Conservative podcast and create a new show called Conspiracy Conversations. Every Saturday morning, we get together with some of the brightest minds in the world that have spent thousands of hours on a topic, churning through the research, looking at things. They've traveled, they've been to the locations, they're looking for the truth because they're as curious as you and I are about what's true. What is really true about our past, where we came from, where we are, and where we're going? We don't bring on guests to iron out their wrinkles and find out the things that we disagree on. No more than I go to the grocery store and try to put everything in the whole store in my cart. I just try to walk out with better ideas than I had when I walked in. If you got something inside you that's like, what about that? I don't even know if I agree, but I would like to hear them out. If you have an open mind and a curious heart, we've got a show for you every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, conspiracyconversations.com.
For more great content, go to flyoverconservatives.com.